there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Where you gonna be tonight? Oh, oh, oh. There's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Get ready for the rest of your life.
Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to SassafrasCast. My name is Rorie Kelly. I am a tarot reader, singer-songwriter, and all-around personal growth nerd from Long Island, New York. And SassafrasCast is a podcast full of witchy insights to help you lead your sassiest life. In just a moment, we will begin the Witchy Weather Report with the Tarot Landscapes deck, which I picked up recently. But first, a shout out to my patrons. If you didn't know, you can support this podcast at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot for $1 per month or more. I record these episodes live, and my patrons get a private YouTube link before each one so they can tune in for the live recording, hang out in the chat, ask questions, and get them answered in real time. They also get access to my Discord server where we talk about all things witchy and wonderful, and a shout out in every single episode. Here we go. Shout out to Amanda Curry, Rachel Miller, Grayson, Periwinkle Twilight, Millie, Rebecca Jones, Brittany Campbell, Jennifer McPhail, and Ondine PM, songwriter, vocals, and guitar for PM Edition. I am so grateful that you are in my world. I thank you for being a part of this podcast, which just started as me wanting to have witchy fun every month. Like, it just started as me being a fan of a few different witchy podcasts, and being like, I could do that. I could go make a podcast and talk about witchy stuff. And here I am. And now I'm on episode 53, which feels awesome and amazing and special. And I don't feel like I'll ever stop. And it's never been, I'm an ambitious person. It's never been like a goal to make this like the thing that supports me or whatever, because I have other things that are really meaningful to me that support me. I do music and witchy shit for a living, and that's like great. I'm happy with that statement. There's the explicit rating because I said witchy shit. But I find that this podcast lets me like deep dive into different topics that I'm passionate and interested about, and mostly only engage with in my own head. And then when I get to share in my own head with books, listening and taking in other information, and when I get to share about it, it starts this conversation that I otherwise wouldn't be having, which I'm really grateful for. So thank you for coming along for the ride, everybody. So we start off every episode with a witchy weather report. We're using the Tarot Landscapes deck, which I just picked up last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago. Time blends together. 2025 is a strange year, but I picked it up very recently. It's edited by Francesca Mattioni and illustrations by Yoshimari, and it really is a deck of tarot landscapes. So unlike a traditional deck, which is mostly focused on various figures, right? Beings in every card, humans, sometimes animals. This is a tarot deck of 78 different landscapes. And it's astonishing to me how easy it is to read with, and just the way that I interpret the card when I am approached with that kind of information is really interesting to me, because it's just dramatically different, like I'm not getting, it's imagery that makes sense for the meanings of the cards traditionally, but I'm not getting the same type of input that I get. If you're watching the video version, which is on YouTube, you can see that I'm going through some of the deck. I'm not getting the same type of input that I do when I look at a more traditional tarot deck, which has like different people and figures. There's some animals on some of these cards, some but not all. And yet I find that this is a very intuitive deck to connect with. So it's really interesting. Anyway, I've been reading a bunch with it and really enjoying it over the last few weeks. So I'm going to pull us all a card. And my intention is that wherever and whenever this card finds you, that it have some meaning for you right in the moment. That it, whether you're watching this live as I'm recording for patrons, whether you're watching it upon release a few days after, or whether you're watching or listening, to the podcast release, whatever, even years later, if you just kind of like went down a rabbit hole and find me, in which case, hi, welcome to the podcast. So here we go. It's a little bit of a big deck. It's a little awkward to shuffle. So enjoy my awkward shuffling moment. I need a shuffle surface. Guys, this is what happens when I record the podcast live, is sometimes things like don't work the way I want them to. Okay, I'm going to try and shuffle it here. I record at my dresser. My dresser kind of doubles as my podcasting desk. Okay, here we go. I've opened up a drawer to shuffle into, and it seems to be working. I'm a professional. I'm also going to do a spread and pick from somewhere in the middle. Okay. Our card is the Seven of Wands. I want to let you all know, first of all, that I've been getting a lot of 7 energy about this month. I'm going to share my own little witchy weather report before I dive into interpreting this card. As I record this, this is kind of timely information for anyone listening kind of in the moment or close to it. I'm recording this on February 8th, 2025. And what I found about this month is that it is a month of foreshadowing. It's foreshadowing February. That's my catchphrase. Not a lot of plot is necessarily moving forward in our personal lives in this month. Rather, we're learning a lot. Situations are evolving around us, and we're learning, and we're also working on ourselves either on purpose or kind of accidentally as different things present themselves to us and we process them, right? So, I'm getting a lot of 7s in relation to what I just said, because this seems to be, when I did everybody's readings for February, one of the benefits of doing these monthly readings that I do now. You can order yours at tinyurl.com/yourtarotmonth. One of the benefits of these monthly readings I do at the beginning of the month is that I really get to take the temperature of the month as I do these readings for a variety of people. And I kind of come off of that day of recording tarot readings with like a pretty good idea of the vibe of how the month is going to go. And February is a foreshadowing month. The plot isn't moving forward. There may feel like there's some frustration, but it's kind of like it's clear that we all need some personal development to gear us up for whatever is coming in March. And so it's an opportunity to do that. It's an opportunity to give ourselves some self-development, give ourselves some also emotional processing time as different things come up in our consciousness, because it will feel like the landscape is evolving, or our sense of what is true and what is real is evolving throughout the month. We're learning things about ourselves as well as about the world around us and other people and what they're doing. And we have a lot of 7s, and 7s are about a pause. 7s are about the pause in between the action, right? If we're reading a novel and there's like a great climactic scene, perhaps there's a battle, there's some kind of a standoff, there's a big deal. The 7 card is the card that happens after that big deal scene, but before the big rise action, main climax of the novel, right? It's like early in the rising action, we've had some things established, and now we're taking a pause and like characters are having a conversation or something, right? 7 of Wands is a card about needing to show up and stand up for yourself. Now, this is a topical card, even though I did say this card has meaning for you whenever and wherever it finds you. It does. This is my intention with the card. So wherever and wherever it finds you, think on what I'm saying here. But at this moment in February 2025, it's undeniable that many of us here in the United States have to stand up for ourselves, have to stand up for our values, have to stand up for others, for marginalized voices, for people who have less privilege than us. We have to stand up. We have to take a stand. And the 7 of Wands in this deck has an eclipse moon, meaning there's truth, but we can't see it all. We're blocked from seeing the full truth, just as we are blocked in moments like this where we have to just take action and hope that it will be enough and hope that we're moving in the right direction. We can't see the outcome. Now, of course, we've all experienced things like this in our personal lives in the past, right? Where we have to make some decisions, we have to make moves. We can understand that it's a high pressure situation, but we are blocked from seeing the outcome. And as humans, we kind of want to game the system a little bit. We kind of want to know as much as we can know so that we can move appropriately within the climate, right? And when we're actively blocked from seeing even what happens next week, honestly, at this point, because things are evolving so quickly, there's a lot of surprises on the bingo card in 2025. And so we have to do our best to stand up for ourselves and stand up for what we believe without knowing what the outcome of that will be. We simply have to be brave and show up for ourselves. And we are urged to do that. And we are urged to understand here on this tarot landscape card, there's an iceberg sticking out of the water, and it's sticking out pretty tall. And there is a figure, unclear what kind of figure. Oh, I think it's a cute little penguin. There's a figure on the iceberg, like looking up at the eclipse, perhaps in wonder, like what the hell is happening, right? A penguin probably doesn't know exactly what's going on with an eclipse, but it's a big moment that affects every person and every animal. And so it's like we're watching these things unfold, and we have to be willing to stand tall and be brave. We can't go hide from them. We have to be willing to stand tall and be brave. And we have to understand our place on the iceberg. We may feel that we're all alone because, not because we truly are all alone, but because we're so activated by what is happening around us that it feels isolating. That's the point, and to bring us back to the present moment here in February 2025, it has long been a political tactic to make your enemies feel isolated, to make them feel alone, and to make them feel helpless. We're not isolated, alone, or helpless. There's a growing network of people who are resisting what's happening in the government, and there is a growing network of awareness and community, and the same community we had in 2024 is still here, right? All the same people and players are still here. Everyone who cared about you in 2024 and everyone who you cared about in 2024 is still here. But the events are so stressful to our squishy human body and our nervous system that we can feel isolated, we can feel alone. And it's important to remember we stand on this iceberg, which makes us feel alone in the middle of the universe, like, with nowhere to go. But the iceberg actually represents a much, much bigger chunk of ice under the water, right? It's not just what appears above the water, it's what appears below. And we have to realize that we are connected. This represents our web of connectivity to other people, to our values, our spiritual beliefs, our own strengths, our own inner resources are bigger than what it feels like right now on the surface of this iceberg, going like, oh crap, everything is really scary. We have to remember that there is much, much more for us to draw on below the surface, and we have to hold that in our minds as we be brave, and we show up for ourselves. We show up for others. We show up for what we believe. That is what we're being called to do right now. Be brave with the Seven of Wands. Often there's an element of bluster with the Seven of Wands. It feels like a card where you feel like you're being bullied. And often the truth of the matter is not that you're outmatched, not that you're outwitted. It's just a final stand that we have to make. So that is the message that I want to share with you for the Witchy Weather Report. Be brave. Know that you're not alone, even if the situation is so scary to you that it makes you feel alone. That doesn't mean you are alone. That's just something that your nervous system is interpreting from the stress. And be brave. Be brave. Act as if you know the outcome and you know that it is possible to make the difference that you need to make. Let's move into our topic of the day, sleep magic. I'm obsessed with sleep. I just want to come clean about that. I'm obsessed with sleep, and not just as someone who thoroughly enjoys sleep. I thoroughly enjoy sleep. But I'm obsessed with the different states of human consciousness. I'm obsessed with what my body and my mind are doing while I'm asleep without my awareness necessarily, and sometimes with my awareness. I'm really fascinated by sleep. I find it to be a mix of the known and the unknown, and an experience that's really compelling for me. It's like dreams I find very compelling too. I'm not going to talk too much about dreams in this episode, especially dream interpretation, because I did a whole episode on dream interpretation. So go back in the past episodes and find that episode. If you are like, I want to talk about dreaming, I want to talk about dreams that I've had and how to interpret them, I did a whole episode for you on that. And you can go listen to that episode, and there's no reason for me to do another episode on that right now. It's already out there. I want to talk about sleep magic, or really like the intersection of sleep and spirituality, some of which is going to be about magic, some of which is going to feel like divination, some of which is just going to feel like spiritual self-care, if you will, spiritual practices around sleep. And I'm going to start this episode with the same lecture I start every conversation about any kind of sleep or dream work. We can only use our sleep and our dreams as a resource if we're well rested. If we are not well rested, then our sleep becomes about survival. Our sleep becomes about catching up on the rest that we have not been giving ourselves. And I'm going to define well rested for you. First of all, one, only your body and your own experience can define for you whether you're well rested. There are rules of thumb that are out there, and I'm going to share some with you. And those are based on statistical studies. And also, I have learned recently that the rule of thumb of like 7-8 hours a night was based on a study that was entirely done with men. This is a thing. This is something that may become a problem again in the near future here in the States. But until fairly recently, and I'm saying like not even 50 years, maybe 50 years, most scientific research was done on studies of men. And so there's data on topics that we know men's experience, and falsely, there's an extrapolation that this is the general human experience, which we know is not necessarily true. And I'm using words like men and women, which are imperfect, right? As someone who acknowledged that there is a diversity of gender and gender experiences and physical differentiation, so this like physical differentiation as well as, the gender that we experience in our, as part of our identity, right? I am supportive. I'm a non-binary person, and I am supportive of every trans person in their experience and every non-binary person in their experience. But it's also important to be able to just talk broadly about, like, in society's kind of binary definition of men and women, a lot of scientific studies were done for a lot of years exclusively on men. And this means that we have some understanding on what kind of like a male cohort experiences with these different physical and mental scientific studies. And we don't necessarily have an extrapolation of the whole human experience because fully 50% or more of the population was left out, right? And we don't have necessarily an experience on what life as a female does to impact this, both psychosocially as well as physically, right? Things like hormones, as well as things like psychosocial experiences. And right now, as I am speaking about this here in the United States in February 2025, there is an executive order that is basically striking down any scientific research grant that has even a hint of diversity and even mentions words like women or words like socio-political factors, or words like it truly is meant to reduce the ability of scientists to study the unique experiences of women, the unique experiences of any marginalized group in society, the unique experiences of people of color. It truly, like, if you look, you can go Google this. I don't have it in front of me, but there is a list of keywords that specifically are an automatic exemption, like automatically take a grant out of the running if they're included in like the abstract. And it means that women's health is severely at risk because literally one of the keywords is women. So suddenly women's health can't be studied. And other keywords include things like diversity. It's part of this whole backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are three very good things that we should strive for in our society. Anyway, I don't mean to go off on too much of a political tangent, but that's a real thing that's happening right now in the United States, is that there's a backlash, and it's affecting even the scientific community and their ability to research things. And this is fairly new. It's fairly new that we have had, as a society, the wisdom to study things beyond a cohort of simply men, and often white men. And so I brought this up to tell you that our understanding of how much sleep a person needs, I recently learned, is skewed by the fact that the 7 or 8 hours is based on a study of men, not a study of people generally. And there's some evidence that suggests women may need more hours of sleep per night, overall, in general. And of course, the truth about how much sleep you need, 8 to 10 is what I read, and that's kind of unverified. I didn't research super deeply into it. And of course, every individual has unique situations and circumstances, physically, socially, psychologically, that dictate where they're at. I'm sure you have experienced needing more or less sleep at different times in your life, right? I certainly have. I've experienced times when I felt like I had a lot of energy and a lot of pickup, and when I fell asleep, I would just crash and often not dream. But then once I woke up, I was good to go. I've experienced times where I needed to sleep, especially after like an illness, like 12 hours a day. Like after I got COVID, I was sleeping 12 hours a day for like a little while. And so, of course, there's variance here, and it's important to honor that, because when we reduce ourselves to statistical numbers that are meant to help us and guide us in making, medical treatment decisions and give ourselves some guidelines as to how to take good care of ourselves, we can miss the mark. We can miss the mark by not taking into account our unique individual situation, both in the moment and as an individual human. There are some people who just need more sleep than others, full stop. There are some people who can thrive on less sleep than others. Overall, 8 hours or more, not around 8 hours, which really means 6 to 8 hours. 8 hours or more is a good rule of thumb. But again, rule of thumb, right? However, I encourage you to experiment with your sleep. I encourage you, and what I mean by this is I encourage you to experiment with getting plenty of sleep, more sleep than you think you need. And whether that means going to bed early or waking up late, whichever feels healthier for you, because there's also evidence that there are people with different sets of circadian rhythms, one of which is like kind of the one that the world is a little bit built for, and that daylight savings time is supposed to be better for, where we kind of wake at dawn and go through the day. And the other one is more of a night shift, which, if you think about it, there's been some extrapolation or some inference that, when we were living in societies where we didn't have the type of developed societies we do, and someone had to like keep watch at night, it was beneficial to have people who evolved to stay up later at night and be able to watch and guard and protect, the cave, the camp, whatever. There are people who are night owls, and there's like a fair amount of research on this. So don't let society gaslight you into the only way to get good sleep is going to bed early. The correct way to get good sleep is to know your body and know how you do with different amounts of sleep, and also like what your ideal sleep window is. And this can change over time. And of course, we don't have full control over this, right? Some of us just have work that we need to be to at a certain time, right? And we may or may not be able to build our lives around that. But it is meaningful for us to learn what we can about ourselves, to just learn like, okay, I feel and function better when I go to bed and wake up around this time versus in this other window, and I feel and function better on this many hours of sleep. And oh, I noticed that that's not cutting it this week. Perhaps it's because whatever, I have a cold, I'm on my period, I am experiencing stress, whatever it may be. So I'm going to try and get more sleep, having an awareness of our body's physical response to sleep allows us to make a much better decision than relying on these rules of thumb that take us out of our body and force us to make intellectual decisions about how much sleep we think or suppose we need based on statistical studies that definitely did study real people, none of whom were us. right? And even if you look closely at those studies, of course, what you find is that those statistics are an average experience. That doesn't mean they're the experience every person in the study had, right? So it's meaningful to cultivate interoception, meaning the sensation of what is going on in your body, and some mindfulness and awareness of how you feel when you're more or less tired and how you feel on more or less sleep broadly. We all know how it feels to kind of wake up on not enough sleep and kind of feel like we're barely getting there, right? We also know how it feels to feel well rested. It's the in between that is worth paying a lot of attention to, because I find that in this society, we are pushed to settle less rest than we truly need. I know I felt this way. I know a lot of people feel this way, and I know a lot of people internalize it and say, I don't need XYZ number hours of sleep, whatever. I'm good with whatever I get. I'm fine. However, I've noticed some of those same people, and I've been one of them, so I'm calling myself out. I've noticed some of those same people saying, oh, I can't meditate, I just fall asleep. Oh, I can't do yoga, I just fall asleep as soon as we're in Savasana. Oh, you put a movie on and I'm out. And those are signs that you're not rested. That's not just oh, my silly body thinks it's time to sleep. Your silly body is desperate for rest. And you've convinced yourself that you're getting enough rest when actually you're not. And you could be living a higher functioning life. And I say this as someone who learned that the hard way. I did an experiment with myself where I got over 8 hours of sleep a night for a couple of weeks. And I was amazed, not just at how much better I felt, but then I had a couple days in, weeks immediately after, where due to just work circumstances or whatever, I really did have to get by in 6 or 7 hours of sleep, a few nights in a row. And 6 or 7, not 4, you know what I mean? And I was wowed by how impaired I was. And it was because I had the basis of comparison of being very well rested for a few weeks. Because prior to that, I had never been well rested for more than a day or two. And it's amazing to think about. And so anyway, I'm going to move on from this topic. I'm just going to say how important it is for you to get to know your particular sleep needs and to pay deep attention and be open to surprising yourself too. Be open to learning perhaps that you need more sleep than 8 hours a night. And that doesn't make you lazy. That's just what your body needs. And you will function better if you give yourself that. Be open to learning that your sleep cycle is at a different time, in terms of when your healthiest, best sleep is, when you sleep well versus feeling like you can't sleep or you're interrupted. Being open to that being at a different time than you expected or than society tells you that it's supposed to be, and being open to it fluctuating. Being open to the idea that, yes, this is an ongoing practice and I might in general need this many hours of sleep. And 10 years from now, as my body goes through changes, that might be different. And if I get sick with something, that might be different. And if I change a physical habit, such as starting or stopping an exercise routine, that might be different. And stress might affect it, right? We should be open minute to minute to understanding that we might need more or less sleep, and that doesn't make us lazy or unproductive. It just makes us human beings who need to take care of themselves. And why is this important? Because we can't access sleep. Well, one of many reasons. Because we can't access sleep as a resource if we are constantly depleted that our sleep is about catching up. Now, sleep does good things for our body that we need and want. Sleep helps our body heal. It helps our cells regenerate. It helps us kick infections. It helps us if we have an injury to physically heal, if we have a cut or a bruise or a bone, the healing occurs while we're asleep, while we're at rest. Growth also occurs during sleep for those who are still growing, for, children and young adults. And so all this really important stuff is happening during our sleep. Also during our sleep, if we're getting enough of it, we're having dreams. If we're getting enough of it and have cultivated the type of relationship with our subconscious that we're remembering them, some people don't remember their dreams. Anyone, I believe, can get to a place of remembering their dreams if they're interested and willing. This doesn't mean everyone has to, you know what I mean? I've been close to people who just don't know or care about their dreams. And to me, I've always been a very vivid dreamer as well as a lucid dreamer. And I'm really curious and interested about dreams. And it's like this whole other life that I have, right? That I'm aware of and sometimes conscious for. And to define those two terms, I use the term vivid dream to mean a dream that feels lifelike. And the term lucid dream means a dream in which you are consciously aware that you are dreaming. It has a very specific definition. Many people don't know that, and they say, oh, I have lucid dreams all the time. And what they mean is they have dreams that are vivid, that are lifelike. So I use that disambiguation at the beginning of this episode so that we can have a conversation and understand the terms. I've always done both. I've always been a vivid dreamer and a lucid dreamer. And I've always been fascinated by that. And it's been a meaningful and interesting part of my life. And for many people, they don't remember their dreams. There are people who don't care to remember their dreams. There are people who wish they remember their dreams. And you can cultivate remembering your dreams, which is also the gateway if you want to become a lucid dreamer. Remembering your dreams is always the first step. By doing things like keeping a dream journal, by not getting out of bed right away, but lying in bed thinking about your dreams. And if you can't remember your dreams the second you open your eyes, then it's like allowing yourself to just gently pay attention to how you feel and any stray thoughts, because those feelings and stray thoughts are left over from the dreams. And if you simply focus on them, if you give them the glow of your attention, it is likely that you will remember more than you can initially when you open your eyes. And if you make that a practice, you do get better and better at it. Why would we want to cultivate this? Dreams are really meaningful. There are people, I would say more people believe a dream to be prophetic than are actually experiencing prophetic dreams. And I say this with love in my heart, and also not to shit on anybody's experience. You know what I mean? I can't tell you exactly what kind of dream experience you had. Only you can know that. But I know that I myself spent a lot of years thinking, wow, what does this dream mean? Is it a message? And really, it was a message, and the message was purely from my subconscious, and it was teaching me about what I was experiencing and what I was going through, and it was teaching me about my subconscious and emotional response to those experiences. And that doesn't mean that prophetic dreams never exist, but it does mean that a lot of the dreams when I was growing up or when I was younger, that I was like, there must be a deeper meaning. This must be a prophecy of some kind. This must be whatever. The reason it felt that way was because it was deeply emotionally significant to me. And so it was hitting me as important. My subconscious and my conscious mind were in agreement that this is important, right? And I say that, again, not to detract from anybody's spiritual experience, but I say it as a grain of salt because I believe that if I'm doing things like leaning into divination, if I'm curious about things like prophetic dreams, I want to be able to cultivate knowing the difference. I want to be able to deeply know myself well enough to understand this is a clear message from my subconscious. And being skilled at dream interpretation, which again, I'm not going to go deeply into in this episode, but you can listen to my other episode about it, is a part of doing that, right? When you get skilled at dream interpretation, it becomes pretty clear, oh, my subconscious feels a certain type of way about this, and that's why I had this dream, even though it felt so wild and impactful. And often, dream interpretation is not about looking up symbols, which again, places us outside of ourselves, gives us this kind of like average of human experience that some person in a book thought important enough to write down in a list of symbols, which may or may not have anything to do with how you and your personal psychology interprets those symbols, right? Even just like, to give an example, color magic. Red in some cultures is a symbol of wealth, abundance, prosperity. Red in modern kind of capitalistic culture is like in the West is a symbol of lost. We say we're in the red when we are in debt, right? And red can also be like a color of danger. Red also means stop on a stoplight, right? So if you have a dream where predominantly all you're seeing is red, your cultural identity really, really has to impact how you interpret that. So going online and looking up a random dream dictionary to tell you what red dreams mean, right, for example, isn't necessarily going to give you a meaningful interpretation that is anywhere near the mark for you, right? If your dream dictionary happens to focus on cultures where red means wealth and prosperity, it might give you that. But if you were raised by two accountants who like look at red as loss, then your dream probably is more likely to reflect that than the wealth and prosperity thing of a different culture, right? So we need to know ourselves to be able to interpret our dreams well, to be able to interpret any kind of intuitive imagery well. When we invite intuition into our lives, we have to understand that there is a library of imagery that is going to affect us individually in unique ways. And yes, also there's collective subconscious energy. There is the fact that there are archetypes that do kind of like press our buttons as humans across different cultures. And as we've also seen, there are cultural differences. So what we can do as people doing the best to interpret our own intuition, what we can do is cultivate a personal library of symbology, a personal library of, and I don't mean necessarily making this a homework assignment where you like make yourself a dream dictionary, but just generally cultivating a personal understanding of like, oh, when I dream about this, it tends to be related to this, right? Or when I pick up this imagery, it tends to mean this to me, right? I have very personal relationships with certain certain sets of imagery, and some of it's about like pure preference. Some of it's about like, oh, I'm interested in that, I'm attracted to that, so I spend more time looking at it and exploring it, and so therefore it becomes like bigger in my kind of personal emotional landscape. You know what I mean? Especially when we talk about big things, like big vague imagery like water. And if you look up the symbolism of water in any kind of symbolism book, you'll see that it can mean a million different things, and should. But when you personally dream about water, or see water when you're channeling, or write something about water if you're automatic writing, you probably have a smaller library of things that it means. You know, there are cultures that associate water with sexuality. There are cultures that associate water with purification. There are cultures that associate water with clarity. The content of the water is important too. Is it clear water? Is it moving water? Right? There are cultures that associate water with the unknown, with the spiritual, with danger, because drowning and sharks, right? And so there are 1,000,001 interpretations if all you do is look up the symbol of water. And we have to use our self-awareness and self-knowledge of like, well, how does water make me feel personally, right? How do these different symbols hit me personally, and how big of a hit is that, right? There are certain things that will give us a big visceral reaction. We'll see or sense them and we'll have a big feeling. Either we'll feel like really drawn, like, wow, that's so, I want that, right? I'm so enticed by that. It's almost romantic to me. Or we'll have a visceral reaction in the other direction, like that frightens me, that disgusts me, that makes me angry, right? And your own understanding of both the level of your reaction, how big it is, and what type of reaction it is, what emotion you are feeling, is going to give you a lot more information than looking up symbolism in a book. That doesn't mean don't explore different meanings of symbolism, because this can help us communicate with other humans. This can help us understand each other better. And yes, it will expand your own library of symbolism and what things mean to you. But learning to turn inward and understand your own personal experiences with different symbols will make you a more effective reader of insert thing here, right? It will make you a more effective reader of tarot cards, to have your own personal library of what symbolism means to you. It will make you a more effective reader of your dreams. It will make you a more effective reader of books. And it will make you a more, it will make you a more effective reader of like whatever spiritual experiences you have, as different ideas and thoughts and images come up to you. You'll be better able to make an interpretation that is meaningful to you if you cultivate this sense of a personal library, of a personal relationship with different symbolism. And some of that will overlap with cultural things, and some of it won't exactly, and none of that's wrong. It just becomes a well for you to draw on as you do your divination or interpretation or what have you. So let's talk about how to invite dream wisdom, because that is kind of that's what I really want to focus on today, inviting dream wisdom. And I frame it that way because I don't want to just say bringing in prophetic dreams, because I think there's many ways we can use our dreams to acquire wisdom. And I think prophecy is but one of them. And I also think, as someone who is who regularly works, who's employed as a tarot reader, self-employed, I guess, right? As someone who regularly works with tarot cards and who does make predictions that have come true, and also has things that I'm like, I don't know about that, so I won't make a prediction, right? That's the vast majority of my experience. As someone who is known for being a spot-on tarot reader, as someone who a lot of people call psychic, and I don't always define myself by that word because it's a big word that means many different things to many different people, and I like to be precise with my language, right? As someone who people kind of look at as like tapped in to that, the vast majority of my experiences, I'm not willing to make a prediction on, in part, sometimes for my mental health, but because I'm like, there's too many factors. I can't know. I'm not getting a sense, right? The vast majority, I'm like, this is way too big for me to make a prediction on. Anything could happen. Just intellectually, I'm like, anything could happen. Anything could happen in the next 6 months. Who knows, right? And therefore, any prediction that I make based on a sense of like, well, here's the direction things are going, right? If 6 more months proceed before that, things can go in a different direction, right? All that has to happen is literally one person to change their mind about one tiny thing, and the whole direction of things can veer off course. So making a prediction and having it be accurate months later feels a little bit like a fool's errand to me. And I say this as someone who it has occasionally happened to, where occasionally I've been like, I think this is going to happen on this date, and I've been right. But it's so rare compared to the amount of times that, frankly, I'm not making predictions. I'm not in the business of making predictions if I'm not really sure about it. Maybe sometimes if I'm like kind of like playing with my ability and doing, testing to find my limits or whatever, maybe I might do that, kind of for funsies in my own journal. But certainly not in a way that I want to impact anyone else's life, because that's my own exploration, right? I think that the most meaningful way to get wisdom is to get information that will deepen your understanding of a situation, your true understanding, not your wishful thinking or I'm my own worst enemy understanding, but like a true understanding, true knowledge outside of how we feel about it, and information that is like guidance, essentially. Like, this is guidance based on what I want that will get me to my goal, right? And I don't look at that as necessarily being prophecy. Prophecy I think of more as like, on such and such a day, the seventh son of the seventh son will drink of the cup of whatever and turn into a goat. I think of or whatever, the stock market's going to crash on XX day, those are prophecies, those are predictions. And I think that we can actually have a much more meaningful experience with any type of divination, including dream interpretation or including channeling or just conversations with our guides or any spiritual entities that we work with, including our higher selves. If instead of looking for prophecy, we're looking for a deeper understanding, and we're looking for help in understanding what actions we should take. So the best questions to ask are, help me understand this better, or help me see what I must do. And these are questions that our dreams can really, really help us with if we're willing to cultivate a good relationship with ourselves and interpret them mindfully. So some of this does hinge on dream interpretation. So I recommend, if you're like curious about that, go listen to that episode. But here are some ways we can have these type of spiritual experiences in our sleep. We can simply ask ourselves or any entity that we're working with, help me understand this. I find this meaningful when there's a problem to solve, which frankly is why a lot of people come to divination. There's like a running joke that people go get a tarot reading because they can't afford or can't access therapy. And my therapist and I actually joke about it all the time, and it's kind of funny. People come to divination when they have a problem. People don't usually come to divination when they're like, everything's great, because they don't want to hear about a problem. Occasionally though, like people come to divination just for funsies, right? Like I read at tarot parties. Those people didn't come to me because they have a problem. They're like, oh, what does the tarot reader say? Let's find out. I'm curious. So curiosity is also a reason that people come. But if you have a problem to solve, if something's weighing on your mind, your dreams can be a really good resource for that. Your sleep can be a really good resource. I say sleep more than dreams because there have also been times where I've had a long, dark night of the soul. You've heard me talk about these before. Finally gotten to sleep and woken up with a clear understanding of what I have to do. And it's not because I dreamed about it necessarily. It's just because I've woken up, things have settled out in my subconscious, however they needed to settle. And now I know what to do. And it's so clear. And there's no longer any confusion, I'll fall asleep. I'll have the long, dark night of the soul. I won't be able to sleep because I'm wrestling with it. Then when I finally do sleep, I will wake up and I'll know what to do. And that is that long, dark night of the soul that I just described is an indirect way of asking your sleep to help you, which we can harness and do on purpose directly. Because basically what I'm doing, or what I've done in these what a long, dark night of the soul is. Oh God, this is stressing me out so much. I can't sleep. And you're tossing and turning, right? And you need to sleep. And you also know that you have something big on your mind right now, and you will be at your best for it if you sleep, but you can't sleep because it's so big, right? And what we are really doing is we are thoroughly programming our subconscious to work on that problem when we finally get to sleep. And we're inserting a lot of emotional energy into it, right? Making our subconscious deem it as highly important. And so then we drift to sleep, and our subconscious, when we finally do get to sleep, our subconscious is like, this is it, kids. This is all we're working on tonight. It's not usually very good sleep in terms of being well rested. I often wake up from a long, dark night of the soul feeling still friggin' exhausted, right? But I know what to do. And so we can harness this and also make it more gentle on ourselves, right? By simply understanding that the process that's happening is we are deliberately falling asleep, thinking about the topic we need insights on, and telling our subconscious in so many words, this is really fucking important. Figure it out. Oh gosh, right? And our subconscious tends to listen to those instructions. Our subconscious, especially as we are falling asleep, is really willing to hear what we have to say, And so this is that piece of information alone is very, very useful. If you struggle with nightmares and you don't want to have them, it's useful to say to your subconscious, please don't give me any nightmares tonight. Give me, don't show me my fears tonight. Don't whatever. It's useful to specifically tell your subconscious, don't do this. And then to specifically give it a different instruction that it can run with too. Instead, allow me to have calming dreams. Because our subconscious loves instructions. It's easier to do this than a don't do this. I think the human mind, it's easier, right? Someone tells you don't think of an elephant, you're immediately picturing an elephant, right? But if someone says, think of a gazelle, well, that's a much easier instruction to follow, right? So if we give our subconscious, if we don't want to have a dream about something, if we say, subconscious, give me healing dreams. Subconscious, give me dreams of comfort. Subconscious, I want to wake up feeling well rested and peaceful, right? We have a better chance of having that experience. And it's a practice, right? Because at all other times, if we're having nightmares, probably there are other influences acting on our subconscious, right? And so we have to be willing to be repetitive, to be heard above that noise. We have to be willing to practice this more than one night, right? We have to be willing to go to bed every night if we're struggling with nightmares and say, subconscious, tonight I want healing dreams. Tonight, I want dreams that feel peaceful. I want to wake well rested. I don't even care if I remember my dreams, right? We can give it new instructions, and we must do so consistently. Because the truth about our subconscious is it's constantly receiving instructions and cues from us, from our culture, from friggin' propaganda, from advertisements, right? It's constantly receiving instructions. And so if we wish for our instructions, our conscious mind's instructions, to be the ones that are heeded, we must be willing to be consistent, and we must be willing to be repetitive. We must be willing to at night do this every night, not just occasionally when we're having a rough time. We must be willing to throughout the day, remind our subconscious, like, this is what's important, this is what we're focusing on. And if there's anxiety in our lives, for example, that can look like throughout the day making mindful choices to say, I am not going to focus on my anxieties today. I will focus on what I can do. And now this isn't a replacement. This isn't a replacement for getting treatment for your anxiety, right? That's the best way. The best thing to do is go get treated, for your anxiety. If you can access mental health care, please access it, This isn't me saying like, oh, your anxiety can be overcome. It's the power of the mind. On the contrary, your subconscious is getting assaulted with so much information and has been for many, many years. And the power of the mind, we have to be very, very dedicated, and we have to be very, very persistent, and we have to be very, very, impactful. Like, we have to mean it in order to hope to change our subconscious's patterns, right? We can't just do it once and expect results. So by all means, seek the medical care that you need, right? Any advice that I give you is never me telling you, so don't go to a doctor. But we can instruct our subconscious and have it listen if we do so with consistency and with persistence and at the right time. And the in-between moment of consciousness is a very powerful time. It's like the veil is thin inside of our own mind, right? The veil, not meaning anything spiritual, but the veil between our conscious mind and our unconscious mind, which, P.S., it's not an on-off switch. It may feel that way, but it's a spectrum. We exist often in mixed consciousness states. In light trance states, we can still walk around and do things. And for example, people, for a while in the late 90s, highway hypnosis was a term that was commonly being used. But if you're driving, especially if it's a route that you drive all the time, you can be in a light trance. And functionally driving, which is scary to think about, but real. However, it also can reduce your reaction time if something unexpected happens, right? And I think that was the purpose of people talking about highway hypnosis in the 90s, was trying to get people to be more mindful. But we exist on a spectrum of consciousness at any given moment, where our subconscious is more active, or what we view as our conscious mind is more active. And when you're in one of these mixed states, when you're kind of on the edge of sleep, where you're sleepy and you're kind of in and out and you're not all the way asleep yet, that's a wonderful time to say some things to your subconscious, or to ask something of your subconscious. Your subconscious loves an assignment. I find that our body does too, and I'm not sure. When I'm speaking with my body versus my subconscious, I don't know what's happening. You know what I mean? In my own mind, I'm like, I often go to sleep, and I'll move into this in a moment, speaking and giving instructions or requests of my body, for my health, for my betterment. And that feels different for me than speaking to my subconscious. And it may not be different. It may be that I'm speaking to both all the time. You know what I mean? That it's all just me, I'm not sure. I don't need to be super right about what's happening under the hood. But I do find that when I speak to my subconscious and I make a request, and I do so often enough that my subconscious knows I mean it. And not meanly, by the way. I don't think it's helpful to yell at our subconscious. You've heard me say this, when our inner demons, our fear stories, our mean girl voice comes up in our head, I don't think it's helpful to argue with ourselves. It's all self. I don't think there's a benefit that ever comes from us getting agitated and mad at ourselves. I think that just makes things harder for us. So my suggestions and requests to my subconscious are loving ones. I say please and thank you, and I don't yell out in frustration. You know what I mean? I may speak firmly. I may say, this is very important. Can we please focus on this? Right? But I'm never going to do it mean. And for me personally, that's been more effective in dealing with my subconscious, and especially my body. So you can fall asleep and ask your subconscious. If you're having something going on in your life that you're torn about, you're having difficulty making a decision, you can ask your subconscious, help me get clear on how I feel about this. And your subconscious will do it. Especially if you remember your dreams, this is really useful. Help me get clear on how I feel about this is a great question, because if you are tuned in enough to have and remember your dreams and think about them in the morning, your dreams will often show you exactly how you feel in a very dramatic fashion, right? If you're like having an argument with a friend and you kind of are not really sure, like, is it me? Is it them? What's going on? And you go to sleep and say, subconscious, help me get clear on how I feel about this, especially again, if you do it a few nights. Often your dreams will show you exactly how you feel. And how you feel is bigger usually than the individual situation. That's normal. We get triggered by, small situations all the time. Maybe you're having a simple disagreement with your friend and then you like go to bed and you dream that someone is like taking your rights away and putting you in handcuffs, right? And you can wake up and know, if you ask your subconscious for insight in that, oh, I feel like I'm getting my choices taken away. I feel like perhaps I'm being bullied or being restrained, right? That's how I feel about this. That doesn't mean that's what your friend is doing to you. It necessarily, maybe they are, right? It means that's how you feel. It means you feel a bigger thing than maybe you recognized in your thoughts about the situation that seemed more innocuous. And that's information. It allows you to move forward. It doesn't mean you should call up your friend and be like, you took my rights away. Although maybe it does if you realize, wow, now that I think about it, this is a problematic dynamic, right? You might want to call out that behavior. Or you might realize, oh, this is a conversation where my friend said some things that reminded me of a time in my youth when I really didn't have control over my life. And I really felt like I didn't have a voice, right? And they're not trying to take my voice away on my analytical, like now that I'm analyzing this, that's not what's happening, but that is how I feel. That's why I felt so conflicted about it, right? And then we can have a really productive conversation where we say to our friends, hey, I want to let you know that when you said this, it made me feel this way. And it might be helpful for me if you framed things this way instead from now on, and it's making it hard for me to have this conversation. But like, let's get on the same page, right? And now that you have this deeper understanding, you're able to have a more functional conversation because you have the self-knowledge. So asking our subconscious for help with understanding ourselves more deeply, always a wonderful move. Asking our body, that's what I'd like to move into next. Communicating with our body through sleep. I've had some luck with this, and I will preface this entire section of the podcast by saying, go to a doctor, get medical care. I'm not telling you to do any of these things instead of medical care. Please get medical care, right? Please follow up on your health and get medical care so that you can deal with whatever it is you're going through. That said, I have asked my body for help with healing while I sleep and had it. I have asked my body to help me not do something while I sleep. I used to grind my teeth when I sleep, and I cultivated over a long time. I cultivated a habit of, as I was falling asleep, simply reminding my body, we're going to keep our jaw muscles nice and loose. We're not going to grind our teeth. And also we're going to keep our airways open because sometimes, I get asthma at night, so that's another thing that I ask my body. I'm like, let's keep our airways nice and open. And this isn't a replacement. I'm someone with asthma, right? I'm not doing this instead of sleeping with an inhaler by my bed, right? Apparently, I learned this. The most common time for an asthma attack is like between the hours of like 3 and 5 in the morning. And it's true for me. And therefore, I always have an inhaler by my bed. I'm not relying on me telling my body, please don't have an asthma attack, to promise me it'll not happen. I take these sensible medical, interventions, right? I go to the doctor, I get an inhaler, I do what I can to manage my asthma in other ways. There's breathing exercises I do, etc. I follow medical advice around it. And also, I ask my body to please keep my airways open at night, and I feel that it's helping. And whether I feel that it's helping and it's really helping, whatever, you can debate that, right? But I can tell you that I know how it feels when I've ground my teeth at night, and me telling my body every night, we're keeping our jaw relaxed, we're not grinding our teeth, most nights means I don't. And I know the symptoms I was getting when I was grinding my teeth regularly, and they're not there anymore. So I can tell you that giving my body that very subconscious suggestion of like, here's what we are and are not doing. And you notice how I frame it. I don't frame it, we're not grinding our teeth tonight. I frame it as, we're keeping our jaw nice and relaxed, right? Because that's something that my body can just do for me. And it is effective. That doesn't mean it's effective 100% of the time. And sometimes I kind of fall off of doing it. And then I wake up and I grind my teeth. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I have to keep on this practice because I don't want to harm my teeth and my jaw, right? So we can ask our body to do things for us. We can ask our body, and we should ask, not tell. We should never be yelling at our body. We want to cultivate friendship with our body, because if we want our body to do things for us, to cooperate, we can't be like, God, why are you so ugly? God, why can't you do that? God, why can't you just like push through, even though we've been working for 20 hours on 4 hours of sleep, right? We need to be kind to our body if we want to cultivate the kind of relationship where we can say to our body, hey, as we sleep, don't grind our jaw, and have it listen, right? Because our body can only do what it can do, right? If we're being horrible to our body all the way through, then that's like being a stage mom. You know, it's like pushing and bullying our body throughout the day, and then expecting at the end of the day for it to listen and blithely follow a loving command, which of course it won't. At that point, it's sleep. All bets are off, and our body is just like, I'm doing whatever I can to recover. Screw you, right? We need to be well rested. We need to be giving our body adequate nourishment. Please don't tell your body to lose weight and give it less calories than it needs and give it more exercise than it can recover from and be like, be smaller. That's abuse of yourself. And I'm not telling you not to have a weight loss goal if that's important to you, if that's something that's been advised by a doctor, if that's something that's just, you know and feel would be healthier for you, but don't abuse your body and then tell it be smaller, right? Like, weight loss is something, if someone is pursuing it, that there's a healthy way and an unhealthy way to do it. And I also really believe that it's harmful to ourself in bigger ways to cultivate this relationship with our body where we're just kind of yelling at it to be less. It will never have a good outcome as far as I'm concerned. Be kind. Be kind in your dealings with your body. Even if you do have a goal of changing your body, right? I had a goal of changing my teeth grinding, right? There are things that I've wanted to change about my physical health and my experiences, and I've asked my body for help with those, and I try to be kind. There was a time when I had back pain for a lot of years, and it wasn't a lot of years, it was a lot of months. It was 1 year. And I woke up every day with pain, my lower back, and I was so frustrated about it. And it seemed like there was nothing I could do to fix it. And telling my body not to have back pain certainly wasn't cutting it. And I was trying to be gentle with myself about it, but there are certain things I also couldn't not do. I lift heavy things. I'm a musician. I lift gear, right? I drive a lot. There were things I couldn't change. And there's stress factors, I'm sure, that I couldn't change. And finally, one night, I asked my body to just tell me what it needed from me. And it did. Like, I literally had a dream that I was doing a certain motion with my back and my lower back. And when I just... And that it was the fix. And I woke up in the morning and I remembered the dream. And I was like, can't hurt, right? And I just started doing it every morning, and my back pain changed like within a week. And it was like, my body was just waiting for the opportunity to tell me, you know what I mean? And of course, the other thing I did is go to physical therapy, right? Like I did the medical care, right? I wasn't just like, oh, I'll figure it out with my intuition. I did medical care, but also me asking my body that one night what it is that I could do for it. And it gave me an exercise that really helped that day, dramatically. And it was like, wow, when we cultivate that kind of relationship with our bodies, we have an opportunity to hear what will work. And when we're always dictating to our bodies, this is what needs to happen, our body's not going to bother to tell us. Just as when we have a relationship like that with a boss or with an authority figure, and they're always dictating and never listening, we don't bother to tell them our opinion at some point. We don't bother to tell them what we know would help because they're not interested in hearing it. They've made it clear that it's a one-way communication, right? So when we open up communication lines with our body and with our subconscious, we have to be open to hearing. It has to be a listening practice. Our own conscious mind speaking to our body or subconscious should be less commanding and more loving. That doesn't mean we can't make a firm command. It doesn't mean we can't say, hey, we're not doing this anymore. Hey, remember, we're keeping our jaws relaxed, right? But we're doing it in a loving way. And we're opening ourselves to asking questions more often than making demands, because the question will teach us what to do, right? If I just say to my body, don't have back pain, my body's like, can't help you, bro. But if I'm like, hey, body, what can I do about my back pain? I got an answer that night. Well, it's worth, in all of our relationships, including our relationships with our body and our subconscious, it's worth cultivating the act of being a good listener. I'm going to move into Which You Got This, where I am going to talk about one simple thing you can do, kind of with all this information I've brain dumped to you during the podcast. So here's what we can do. Cultivate an answer to a burning question as you sleep. And so first, identify the question. Much like I teach in tarot, and by the way, my Meaningful Tarot workshop is coming up again. It's going to be the first weekend of March. So when I'm teaching tarot, if you're interested in signing up for that, just follow me on Sassafras channels. You'll see me make the announcements. But the first thing I tell people is you have to know what your question is so that you can answer it effectively, especially if people have a hard time where they're like pull cards and they kind of read the meanings in the book and they're like, I don't know. I don't really know what this reading is saying, right? Well, have a question. Even if the question is simply, what do I need to understand for the next week? That's still a very specific question, right? But even better yet, if there is something on your mind, ask the question. What do I need to understand about this situation, this relationship with this person right now? What do I need to understand about whatever? If you're talking to your body, what do I need to understand about my back pain right now? That's what I asked essentially, right? Ask a question. Identify what it is that you don't know, to the best of your ability. The question might be, help me understand this better, because you might be aware, like, there's a lot I don't know. I just need more understanding. I just need more. So then the question is, help me deepen my understanding, right? Have that question in your heart and decide who you will ask it of. You may have that question for your subconscious. It may be, help me get emotionally clear on what's happening here, because I don't know why I feel this way, right? Then that's a great question for your subconscious. It might be, help me understand how I can treat you better, body, right? For your body. It might be that you're seeking more external guidance, right? It might be that you're like feeling like, I don't know how to handle this situation. That's why I'm consulting my dreams about it. And then you might want to work with your higher self, a deity, a guide, an ancestor, a spirit you work with, right? Someone that you already have a relationship with, whether a spiritual relationship, right, that you've cultivated through your practice, like with a guide or a deity, or, like a relationship with yourself because it's your higher self or something. Ask. Focus as you're in that mixed consciousness state of making that connection. I usually make a little energy offering when I'm asking for or wanting insight from a guide or something, or even my own subconscious. And it's almost like that just helps focus me. But I also think it's a nice way of saying hello, right? For example, if I'm working with Aphrodite, I will like envision this like loving pink care, love energy, right? And I'll just envision it kind of radiating off of my body. And that's my way of kind of making that connection, is I like lean into the energy of the connection, of what I associate with Aphrodite. And I then would ask my question, and it might be, help me understand this, or it might be like, what do? And I ask it knowing that I'm about to fall asleep and saying, I'm about to fall asleep. Help me understand this through my sleep. Help me understand this through my dreams. Right. And, I had a pretty meaningful experience with that, just a couple days ago, where I asked one of my guides, around a topic that I just didn't know what to do about. I was like, help me understand what I got to do, or just like help me, because I feel like really stuck and really anxious about it. Like, what's the step I can take, right? And I got actually a very clear piece of imagery that in my personal image library made sense. And the imagery was of a butterfly unfolding its wings before the sun. And as someone who does regular tarot card pulls for myself, the sun has come up recently, but it's not come up it's come up in my future recently. If that makes sense, right? Like, there will be a time when I have some more awareness, but it's not right now. And I've also been reading for a deck where the Hanged Man is represented by a chrysalis, a pupa, like a butterfly in training, right? The goo stage before you're a butterfly, which is a great metaphor for the hanged man. But anyway, seeing that imagery, which I saw almost like right upon waking after asking that question of the butterfly spreading its wings before the sun, made it really clear to me, like, I don't have a thing I need to do around this. What I need to do is allow the fullness of time to occur, right? Like the sun is on the way, the understanding is on the way, and that's when I will be able to feel I can make my move. I shouldn't prematurely do that before I have understanding. And it was like an answer that I was satisfied with that helped me move forward, right? So you can ask your guides, your subconscious, any number of, whoever you work with, for insight, with the understanding that they'll respond to you kind of based on your own personal kind of imagery library, while you're sleeping or while you're just as you're waking up, and set an intention with yourself to pay attention and listen and remember it. And this is going to be more effective if you're well rested. So, you got this. Try this at home. Think about a burning question that you have, or just a topic in your life where you really need some guidance, and ask just choose who you want to ask, your body, your subconscious, a guide that you work with, a deity, an ancestor, etc., etc. Choose who you want to ask and practice this for 7 days, not one. As you drift off to sleep, you might get an answer the first night. You might not. As you drift off to sleep, practice this for 7 days in a row, and just make a practice in the morning of writing down anything you remember that feels like it might be relevant. Or even if you remember your dreams and it feels irrelevant, write down just a loose sketch anyway, because you might get a few things in a row that seem irrelevant, and then when you look at them together, you're like, oh, I understand what I'm trying to be. I understand what's being like fed to me here. Like, actually, this picture makes sense, right? Try this at home. 7 days. Ask yourself your burning question before you go to sleep. Have a practice of waking up in the morning, not getting out of bed, and just writing down whatever you remember, and see if your question gets answered. Thank you so much for being a part of my world. Thank you for listening to me ramble about sleep magic, and really about how we can cultivate a relationship with our subconscious, because that is what we're doing when we're working with sleep magic. If you're a bonus patron, if you're a $5 and up patron, there will be a bonus episode on how to use your pre-sleep moments as a jumping off point to having a spiritual experience in your dreams. I'm going to give you some guidance on that. That's what I will cover in the bonus episode. I'm pretty excited about that. I've done that a few times in my life, and it's always been interesting. I'm going to say, like, interesting, wild, and unexpected. If you're someone who's interested in having visions, if you're someone who's interested in having downloads, like that kind of thing, like literally like being given information and then needing to interpret it, working with your dreams is a very powerful way to do that. And so if you're interested in having a spiritual experience in your dreams, I can tell you it's going to be heightened, it's going to be weird, it's going to be emotional, because our dreams are heightened, weird, and emotional, right? And you're going to have a lot to chew on if you're willing, of course, to take the practice of like learning to remember your dreams and being gentle and patient with yourself. You can have some really amazing experiences. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in my bonus episode. If you're a $5 and up patron, you can get access to that. If you're not and you want access, you can get access to every single bonus episode right now if you go and sign up on Patreon, which brings me to this. Where can you find me? If you like this podcast, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find me at Sassafras Tarot at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot. If you'd like to unlock exclusive podcast benefits, you absolutely can. $1 a month or more gets you access to already a bunch of stuff. $5 a month or more gets you the bonus episode. $10 a month or more gets you tarot pulls, a couple other things like that. If you'd like to connect with me, just like chat with me, you can email me at sassafrastarot@gmail.com. You can follow me at Sassafras Tarot, SassafrasTarot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, and Threads, and TikTok. And if you'd like to order a reading, go to linktree/Sassafras Tarot, linktr.ee/Sassafras Tarot. That will lead you both to my monthly tarot reports if you want one, or my general Etsy tarot shop. Get in touch. I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to talk witchy shop with you. And if you want to join the Patreon community, I'd love to do so on the regular. Anyway, Thank you for being a part of this. I hope you go and explore your sleep from a more magical perspective this month. And if you do, and you have stuff to share about that, or you have questions, remember you can reach out to me anytime at Sassafras Tarot on social media, because I would love to have a conversation with you about this. I'm obsessed with this topic. Okay. Have a wonderful, everybody. Sweet dreams.